So today I know we've planned to tackle a number of issues as well as solutions, but first I think we should start with kind of a level set on our industry. And so this two-part question is for each panelist, focusing on how things are going in terms of gender equality. How would you rate our industry on a scale of 1 to 10, and what are the barriers from a gender perspective? I know that's a loaded question, but if we can get Kari, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I would rate that probably a 4. I feel like we are really lacking. I mean, I just look in my current position right now and how many females I have working in my group, and I literally have 2 out of 25, and that is significantly low. And I just feel that, the opportunity may be there, but I also feel that, maybe we don't see a lot of qualified women in the industry. And I think it's, I go back to, college. I almost think that even I look back when I went to college, there was one other individual in my class, and that was it. The rest were males. And so, it's discouraging when you think of that, when you think of the pool that you get in qualified applicants, even it's so small that, we need to engage with our universities. We need to engage with, our high school seniors and, have them reach out and discuss the, great possibilities they have in this industry and, the opportunities that they have to grow.
Laura, over to you.
Oh, I thought I was being harsh, but maybe I'm being generous. I'd rate it a 5. So, and agree with what Kari was saying. I think there's been so many times over the past years, and especially in those technical roles where, I found myself being the only female in the room. And it's when you're in those cases that it's very obvious, and you feel the fact that you're a female, which ultimately, what does good look like? It looks like not having that being put in your face or brought to your attention. And so I think, representation within the industry is critical at all levels, and making sure that we have people sitting at the table making decisions that affect our industry and affect society at large. The group that are making decisions that impact that should reflect the industry. They should reflect society at large. And so, what are the hurdles at the moment? Absolutely, the number of viable candidates for the roles, as Kari was saying, and that goes all the way back to school, universities, and supporting that pool. But also then I think in the hiring process, there's a critical mass. There's a lot of men in the industry, and it's very easy to recognize value when it looks like something that's familiar to you. So I think there's times maybe where we're unconsciously preferencing men through that process just because it looks like something that we already know. Not necessarily, I don't think that's our intention, but it's something that I think we should be candidly talking about.
And Mitzi.
I guess I would say, I guess I'd split it both ways. And I'd say that from industry, I think it is a 4. I think that on the government side, it's probably a 5. And I agree that what I see is I see a lot more women on the legal side. I see a ton of women on the marketing side. I see, frankly, a growth of women in non-technical managerial positions that may actually oversee tech. I see a lot of women who can be good tech translators. So they can take geek speak and sort of translate it into things that people actually understand or care about. But I continue when I am in meetings with engineers on the technical side, it is always a revelation to me that there is a woman in the room. I am frequently in meetings in which I am the only woman. If I'm talking about digital equity, many more women. When I talk with corporate, I mean, it's kind of interesting to me. When I talk with, corporate diversity, corporate philanthropy, I see many more women. But when it comes to, and where I'll say is the worst by far is the construction side. The only women I see, they pay the bills.
And to pick up on that, I know Mitzi is a point, you have a female boss. And so I think what role, how important is it to have those female role models, who are on the C level and can show to say, look, there is advancement in our industry.
I think it's important. But I'd also say I think it's half, because I think mentoring, and as Kari mentioned, recruitment. Well, so if you'd say it's a third. See, I can do math. And what's funny is I know a lot of young girls who are good at math, right? And yet we persist in this narrative like, oh, I'm not good at math or these other things. So I think it starts early. I think that having female role models is great, because it just knocks out a huge perception, right? And I think that across the board, particularly when we had a new county executive, and he made a point of trying to look to see that he could get half of his department directors be women. So I think that not only like having one, but having it in numerous places, and having them be in some technical areas is big. And what I also appreciate about my CIO is that she actually came from a computer background, so she's got she both handles the political savvy of it, but there's nobody saying like, well, yeah, she's good at this, but she's other reasons. So I think that's great. I think it also helps in, what I've seen is that there were women who did not seek a promotion because they were concerned about what impact that would have on their life-work balance. So they're not moving up into those middle management and higher senior management positions that puts them in a position to be in those C-suite. So I think that's important. I also think that mentoring, one is positively reaching out individually to, like, so in public praising, like when somebody who's a junior technician has done a really good job of saying that in front of other team members. But I also think having private conversations about, and I do this both with men and women, which is to say, when you're in this meeting, the information that you presented, if you presented it in this manner, it would be a lot more effective.
I think this really lends to the next point, which is, the big one in the room, which is the pay gap. And there's obviously a gender pay gap that's visible, that's invisible. And I know you have some really interesting ideas for how you're dealing with that at Biarri.
Yeah, I think, what we were seeing was that people that were good at negotiating had a bit more sway in their salary than those that weren't. And this wasn't just from a gender equality basis, but just across the board. And so something that we started to do was a lot of research around, okay, what's the value of each role as we consider it as a company, and putting that into a matrix, a salary matrix, which basically is a summation of that research where we've assigned a value to each role, and that becomes the framework for conversations around salary negotiations. So the driver for that was, to create this framework that promoted fair and objective process around negotiations, and it allows the conversation then to be about the role that's being done, the performance, rather than the person on the other side of the table, their ability to negotiate. And in doing so, I think, and I wouldn't say that we're perfect at this. We're working down this path of trying to make this a very objective framework, but it puts everyone on a much more even playing field, which I think is important, given that we know from the research that women are generally less likely to put themselves out there to push for higher pay. but across the board, you know, some personalities may put themselves forward and others may not. So it's really about just creating that even playing field and saying, as a company, we're going to place this value on that role rather than leaving it up to that person's ability.
I want to direct this to the audience and say, you know, for everyone listening and what you've heard today, you know, I challenge you to take a look at what your company is doing and what your practices are in terms of gender equality, the pay gap, bringing in more diversity. What are you doing to make sure that we can achieve zero barriers in our industry? And so I'd like to ask our panelists to direct their closing thoughts to that. And I'll start with Laura first, and then Kari, and then Mitzi.
Yeah, sure. And maybe just to build on what you were saying, Laurie, I think what I would challenge anyone listening here to do is to really challenge the default beliefs and behaviours and systems we have in place within organisations. I think often we can think that things are fair and objective, but actually to really question how and why we do what we do, and critically think about, are those processes and systems having the impact that we want them to have, or are they in some way actually propagating this the bias that we can sort of see that already exists?
Great. Kari.
Yeah, I think that, you know, like you had said, we need to challenge our employers, you know, and our management to continue to promote female representation and female growth within our companies. And, you know, when we see the inequality, we need to step up and speak up and encourage, you know, like Mitzi had said, mentoring, you know, our females within the workforce, that they are, you know, they do know math, like Mitzi said, they can do this. And, you know, we want to make sure that they feel empowered to do so as well.
Great, thanks. And Mitzi, closing last 30 seconds.
Well, I'll actually answer the question from Eric Geller, which he asked, to what extent do you think the rise in gender equity is associated with displacing raw power politics? And I will say, I know some pretty ruthless women. So I think the answer is no. I think that there's just a greater awareness of it. And I would also say, to follow on Kari's point, is not only speaking up, but when you have your other male colleagues who come to you after the meeting and tell you, you know, hey, and support you, it's like saying to them, that's great. Next meeting, will you say that in the meeting?
Excellent point. Thank you all for such a fantastic discussion. You are all terrific women who are killing it in the field, and appreciate your time today. And thanks everybody for listening. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your digital network week.